allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry. Yeah, you're on time. Alex, would you call the roll?
I think it's
sorry.
Kelly can do it. She's here tonight.
Yep. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Michael DeVito.
Here.
Christian Copple.
Here.
Alfred Evans.
Here.
Alex Brados.
Here.
Paul Regnery.
Here.
Alan Zantu.
Present.
Quorum is present.
As a reminder, our board governs by policy aligned with state law. These policies are not just guidelines, but legal and ethical obligations that ensure transparency, accountability, and consistent leadership. When policies no longer meet the needs of the district, it's our responsibility to amend them within the bounds of the law to better serve our community. The board acts only as a whole in duly convened public meetings with a quorum present. Outside of this structure, no individual member has authority. Adherence to policy protects the district from risk and ensures that our decisions are fair, lawful, and aligned with our strategic goals. Our mission is to empower all learners to succeed in their world, and our vision is to provide an ideal learning experience where students and staff are engaged and want to come back the next day. Our board policies and actions should reflect that mission and vision. All right. Move to our first item on the agenda here. You guys have all got your board packets. Do you have any issues? Give me a quick second. Just pulling up my. Is there an embedded note for item 3.01?
Yeah, you have to.
That's not an.
It should. Oh, you're not logged in then.
No, it is.
Are you sure? Because here, it's on.
Are you seeing it?
Yeah.
Just use this. Yeah, here, now I got it. Let's see.
For 2.02.
Yeah, I'm signed in. Yeah. It's just not showing. Let me try something else. Let me try. There we go. All right, thanks. Briefing notes. Okay. So first item on the agenda we have is recognition spotlight. And with us, we have hopefully some people in the audience. I'm looking, I see across. Matt Moore and Sarah Moore are nominated by Dylan Zabler, their student, and his mother. So I have some notes here. Let's see, I'd like to nominate Ms. Moore and Mr. Moore because they're both responsible, confident, and always willing to help their students. Since I started middle school and joined the ABLE class, they both helped me feel more confident in myself and in my learning. They make a great team and work together to make class fun, interesting, and full of new challenges. Mrs. Moore and Mr. Moore take time to explain things so everyone can understand. They encourage us to ask questions and never make us feel bad if we make a mistake. When I do well on my work or get a good grade, they both make me feel proud and remind me how far I've come. Their teamwork makes a big difference in how I learn. They make me excited to come to class every day and believe in myself even when things get hard. Because of them, I've grown more confident, responsible, and ready to take on challenges. That's why I think Mrs. Moore and Mr. Moore both deserve to be recognized. Are Mrs. Moore and we have the audience here? You don't want to put you on the spot. So this is from Dylan's mom. I was nervous for him to be starting middle school because it was going to be a big change, but this transition was way better than I could have ever planned. His confidence and his excitement went through the roof, and when he goes to school, I pick him up from school to check his grades on his phone. It makes me so happy, and I want to thank everyone at the middle school. This has been the best. Kudos to you. We also have Evelyn Smith, nominated by Ava Lewis, her friend. Evelyn shows great empathy to every student that she meets, making sure that they feel comfortable and understood by her. She makes sure that everyone is included, makes sure that they feel welcomed. She is super responsible in a sense that she can always make sure she knows what she can do to help teachers and students and get the most out of her time at school. So to Evelyn Smith, we applaud you, and so does your friend.
Michael, I'll just add, Evelyn was unable to be here because she had final testing at the fire department tonight. So staying busy doing other things as well.
Absolutely.
Going above and beyond.
That's wonderful. Kudos to you. That is all we have for our recognition, our student and staff recognition. So we'll move on to our next item on the agenda.
Michael, just before we move on, we did skip over 2.02, so I don't know if you had anything on that or if we need to hit on it.
Nope, just embedded, yep, thanks. Appreciate that. Alright. Consent, alright. We have a consent agenda here. Any comments on the consent agenda? Does anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda?
4.05. I'd like to pull that and put it into new business, please.
Okie doke, we will pull 4.05 and put it into new business. You got it. All right, anything else on consent?
I would just like to thank you for your newsletter publicly. And I hope everyone hearing this will read it because it really gives a lot of valuable information about what the board does and about more of what our role is. And thank you for writing that newsletter.
Thanks, Beth. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Let's see. So that'll make 3 people who have read it. My wife, you, and myself. So
It really, it's worth taking the time to read. It's not overly long and it gives a lot of great information.
I appreciate that. So we're putting 4.05 in new business. Any action on consent? Is there a motion?
So moved.
To approve.
To approve. Yep. So there's a motion to approve consent agendas as presented, items 4.01 through 4.04 and 4.06 through 4.07, minutes of regular meeting, minutes of executive session, November 25th, 2025, bills payable, financial reports, personnel report, and gifts and donations report. Is there a second? Are you at a second? I'm sorry.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Kelly, would you call the roll?
Poppel,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Grados,
Yes.
Regnery,
Yes.
Zantu,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carried.
The next item on the agenda is the NIA consent agenda. Is there any discussion about the NIA consent agenda before we solicit a motion? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the NIA consent agenda as presented, items 5.01 through 5.04?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'll restate the motion. It's to approve NIA consent agenda as presented, items 5.01 through 5.04, and that is NIA treasurer's report, NIA bills payable, NIA personnel report, NIA contract and vendor agreement report. We have a motion, we have a second. No discussion. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Evans,
Yes.
Grados,
Yes.
Regnery,
Yes.
Zantu,
Yes.
Poppel,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, next item on the agenda is audience to visitors. Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Sycamore Community Unit School District 427 Board of Education. Guided by Board Policy 2230 and the Illinois Open Meetings Act, this is a business meeting held in public. The 7 of us seated here are your neighbors, volunteers, entrusted by you to care for our schools, and we are truly grateful that you've chosen to spend a portion of your evening with us. To balance participation with the board's agenda, we've reserved up to 30 minutes for public comment. Each speaker is kindly asked to limit remarks to 3 minutes, and unused time may not be transferred to another person. Any extension requires a majority vote of the board. When you're recognized, please approach the podium, state your name, and share your thoughts. The board will listen without debate this evening. Questions or concerns, when called for, will be routed through the appropriate administrative channels for follow-up consistent with our chain of command procedures. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand, wait to be called. Thank you for lending your voice and helping us model effective self-government for our students. Would anyone like to address the board at this time? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, superintendent reports. Item 7.01, these are informational only, building and departmental updates. Any comments? I'll just kick things off with these were great reports. We're grateful for you guys having prepared them. Really comprehensive information here. Any comments on the reports, communication and technology?
Yeah, I have a question about the technology one.
Sure.
With regards to Sabres, it says that we want to ensure that teachers have sufficient time to complete the student assessments. I thought Sabres was like students would fill out a form or some sort of survey as opposed to the teacher. Do the teachers fill it out on their behalf, or how does it work?
So there's, can I answer this?
Oh, yes, please.
There's two parts to Sabres. Grades 2 through 12 have My Sabres, which is part that the student fills out. And then there's also Sabres, which the teacher fills out. It'll look a little bit different at different grade levels, but at grades K and 1, they are not able to take the My Sabres assessment, so it would only be the teacher filling out the assessment. And for grades 2 through 5, you could have both the student and the teacher filling that out. But they're basically the same assessment, and you can then compare student results to teacher results. So self-assessment and then what the teacher's seeing.
Would that sub-coverage need board approval? I'm just not sure if we need that tonight, because it was one of the, or is that just for information? Or you,
It's information as we're
Okay.
planning for future years.
Gotcha.
So if, I know currently one of the board goals does have to do with this assessment, so I had just included some things for you all to consider along with that. One of them being ensuring that the teachers would have the time to fill that out, and the other being the grade levels associated with that goal, and the grade levels it might be maybe more prudent to give the assessment to.
so have we started administering it? Will we have it done by because it's one of the goals for this year, I believe.
This school year?
Yes.
We are piloting it this
Okay.
year to find out all of that information, including how much time it might take teachers to complete, what that might look like at a 6-12 level where a teacher could have many teachers, or I'm sorry, a student could have many teachers.
Yeah.
That there's not if a student's in 3rd grade, it's very clear who would be filling that the teacher portion of that assessment out for them. If they are a 6th grader, that's much less clear.
And then lastly, what would the grades be that would align this to state law? And that was mentioned in the memo too. Is there?
3 through 12, grades 3 through 12.
Okay, and right now it's K through 4 is what?
In the board goal,
I believe so, or whatever the deliverable was.
Deliverable is pilot a unit. Sorry, I got it right.
yeah.
The deliverable is pilot a universal screener to elementary students and 6th graders during the 25-26 school year to begin systematically measuring student perceptions of physical and emotional safety and security. So it is pilot the screener, and it's elementary and 6th is what it says.
Okay.
So we are piloting.
Yeah.
We've already begun the pilot for grades 6 through 12. We've met on that. I think I had a little bit more detail in the memo on that. But we did start the pilot for grades 6 through 12. In January, we're going to be piloting with some K-5 classrooms as well.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks. That clears up my question.
I'll add just one comment on, you'd mentioned too in the report, going through, I'm gonna use the lingo you said. It was AI Tool Exploration Initiative. And I thought that was neat, and I know I read in Parent Square there was Edpuzzle and Screencastify. I think there was an overlap there, and we consolidated resources for like a generally good means, it seemed like. So I just kudos to you again in identifying those overlapping services and seeing them come together. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for overlapping services with some of these AI tools and some existing software we may have that might lead to less in purchase services. So I think that's, again, a great opportunity. So it's like the kind of the unsung benefit to artificial intelligence as a tool is just where it spills into so many other pieces and can realize cost savings. So and you're right on that. So that's awesome. And also, I liked in the spotlight there too, you had Molly and Beth and were outlining their exceptional leadership in artificial intelligence training. I know that's got to be think having been the guy who's showing how to use the AI in our office, it's kudos to you. So it's got to be tricky. So appreciate that. I know it's not an easy thing to wrap your mind around, and especially from the instructional side. I was doing some of these. Google does like these little like micro credentials you can do, like course just to understand some of like the cloud-based AI stuff that you can do, and just I can't imagine in education how much more complicated that can be, especially then on the instructional side. So that's awesome. Any other comments on the? Sorry.
Just thank you for a wonderful report. Is that information then stored in the student's personal record? That what's ever compiled in the Savers? Yes.
We do have that data like in our MTSS software system. So that's been something I think I mentioned in the report as well, EduClimber. We can look at all of those different pieces together.
Okay.
We're not necessarily storing it any additional place, like we're not putting it into our student information system. And we did reach out to any parents whose students would be taking it to get their permission first as well.
Oh, that's good. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The communications report, I was really interested in the student achievement dashboard, and I saw the note that we looked at, going out to third-party vendors, and it seems like we're going to try to build it in-house, which I think is really neat. And kudos to Mike for taking on that project. It's no easy feat.
It's a lot
So
of work.
yeah, so I'm excited, and he seems really confident too in what it's going to look like. I know he had some really good ideas, and I've utmost faith in him. So that'll be neat. Also, just on the communication side too, lot of ground covered and some awards. And also I saw in the spotlight they had building and grounds crew and transportation department as their Spartan spotlight. So I know that a lot of hard work, especially this time of year. So again, recognition there.
I wish I could have made that basketball game.
Yeah,
It's on her. That must have been fun.
Looks fun.
Sycamore won. That's what well, I guess like in the greater sense, right? Sycamore is
I hope.
like
that's-
our school.
Staff
Staff
one
one.
for the
Yeah,
third
let's-
time in a row. You
yeah.
are right. Yes.
Are they going to have another one?
Yeah, it's become an annual event. So this was the third one.
Okay.
And the plan is to keep it going. It was a good turnout. There was a lot. I think when I last reported to you guys, I just talked about that night, but the middle school too did a competition that coincided with it and raised nearly 3,000 items for the food pantry on top of what we had done that night. So pretty great event for the community.
Is there any chance of doing it more than once a year?
I don't think I'll be recovered in time. We'd have to get a whole new roster. It takes me about a year to recover, and that's the next time I'll touch a basketball. So, but they have other events that they do throughout the year. So I think this is kind of a one-off. That's good. So
That's great.
Yeah,
Fun and
it's a
for
lot
a
of
good cause.
Anything else on the communications report? All right.
I thought they were really just comprehensive, good overall updates of where things are at. Appreciate it.
Nick and I were talking too about a cadence for these reports and kind of trying to establish sort of a more moderated one so we avoid our 10 report. We had a good baseline established, and then the hope is now we get into a routine. So
to where we maybe have 2 to 3
different
a
departments.
meeting.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
all right, item 7.02. You guys saw the memo. Any comments, questions? Nick, anything to add? Everything is in the memo, or are you anything?
Yeah, everything's in the memo. It's still in, legal's kind of working through some things. Our previous agreement was pretty old. So just to bring it up to speed, we met with them again with some of our building administrators. That was just today as well, right? We had a lot of meetings today. So that was today, just to talk about kind of what's going on in practice and make sure it's aligned with best practice and with what we want to outline in the agreement. So I think we're on track there. The one piece that I added into this that originally had been outside of kind of our conversations, but we thought of kind of late due to changes recently is just Caitlin Peterson, who was the SRO at the middle school and oversaw the elementary buildings as well. During her time in that role, something that was new to Sycamore Police Department was therapy dog, bringing on Dooley. Well, then when she was promoted, which probably wasn't necessarily expected, when they brought on Dooley, Dooley went with the handler, so Caitlin. So Caitlin does a great job, even if she's working nights, of trying to make Dooley accessible to our schools. But I also think that's something that we've lost. That was a great addition of just kind of aligned with our SEL initiatives. So to just explore with any additional SROs or with the SROs we have, the addition of a therapy dog for the elementary buildings, just to help out with some of those other needs that we talked about in some of our committee meetings. So I think to continue exploring that agreement, but also continue exploring the possible addition of 1 to 2 SROs moving forward in the future, which I think the city sees a need in, or a want as well. That could be great for Sycamore, for our schools and school safety.
Comments?
Question, just curious, timeline, any idea, Nick or Nicole, when we might kind of hear back or move forward on it?
Yeah, I think if all goes perfectly, which we know how
Just
that
trying to
goes.
get an idea of timing.
I think we had it at the end of February. If all goes well, and we're working with another entity, obviously, but we think we'll have it in a place to get it in front of the city in January, and then with their meeting kind of cadence that they have, if all goes well, and we allow them to talk about it and then to make a decision on it, then it could maybe be kicked back to us for our February meeting.
Great, I like the
Do
direction.
you think they'd see it at their January meeting? Is that what you were thinking?
That's the hope. That's the intent. Yep.
Gotcha. And just looking at this here, I know I was reading kind of the NASRO stats and the 1 per 1,000 students. I think something just to think about is, like, right now we have 2 SROs. We have 19,000 people in this community. Our schools right now are split, our student population around 4,000 students. If we use the NASRO standard, that puts us at 1 per 1,000 students. So that put us closer to like 4 school resource officers. I know right now, like with our city, we have an intergovernmental agreement where there's shared costs. And I think there's probably an opportunity to look at that too with this IGA as we wait to hear back from legal and see what they have to say about updates. So just general interest, I think, in looking at some of these numbers, some of these recommendations, and then how that fits into the fold of what we're doing, I think will be useful. So thank you for putting this together.
Absolutely.
Any other comments on the SRO update?
Well, just that I remember, it's been some time ago, but somebody brought to a funeral golden retrievers, and I think they were based out of Genoa. I was just looking for it, but it just pulled up a Facebook page, so I don't want to take up too much time searching right now, but
So they're based all over. They have handlers all over that the organization will call, just put out a call, and then they come where they're needed. We have used that organization. Unfortunately, they're great, but unfortunately, we've had to use them probably 4 times this year. I would guess 3 to 4 times already. But they've been very supportive of both staff and students, and come whenever we've asked them to this year for some of the things we've been dealing with. So, yep, we continue to use them and have that partnership.
okay. Yeah, I just wanted to mention it.
Yep.
And hopefully you won't need to use them.
Yeah.
Anytime soon. But it was nice, I remember that.
Yeah, they've been great.
All right, item 7.03, our annual boundary study review. Nick put together a really nice memo, really detailed. This was excellent. Talked about a couple of pieces, but I'll just jump to the recommended next steps, which is just continue refining the current boundary review analysis, provide updated enrollment capacity, demographic information. Kind of feels good. Compile background information on instructional delivery models, including attendance centers used in comparable districts. Identify key questions and data points that would need to be addressed should the board wish to explore instructional models more formally in the future. Monitor emerging trends and stakeholder feedback related to instructional alignment, program access, and elementary configuration. Prepare preliminary overview of potential study components, data needs, engagements, considerations, operational impacts that could be used by the board in the next superintendent if further exploration is desired. So I think that those are all excellent recommended next steps. Is there any comment or feedback on the boundary study review, or just the explorative nature of those recommended next steps from administration?
I'll just add in kind of how we got there is I think through committee meetings or just teachers coming up to me, attendance centers has been mentioned multiple times, but sometimes that's followed up with, well, we're not due for a boundary study for a couple years. To me, you could talk about attendance centers when the boundary study comes up, but it could also be the other way. Like these aren't things that have to go with one another. Attendance centers is more of just what how we deliver instruction, I think, or what each of our buildings looks like, versus tied to boundary lines. That would be more neighborhood schools. So I do think it's worth, because there seems to be an interest, continuing to explore the attendance center model, even though we're not due up for a boundary discussion for a couple years, and that if for some reason we decide to continue to explore, or decided that was a route we wanted to go, I think that could fall outside of that 5-year boundary study timeline if the board thought appropriate. So that's where this came from and how it kind of came up.
I think something too that was an interesting conversation that came out of our parent-teacher advisory committee meeting was the disparity gaps among our elementary schools. And so it's interesting because when you think about like, and I'll just pull up, if I use like school report card data, which it's not perfect, but like you go and you look at some of the numbers at North Grove, and then you look at some of the numbers at say like South Prairie, there are just really different needs that those schools have. And so then you go, okay, well, how do you effectively allocate resources to be able to address the needs at South Prairie and then address the needs at North Grove? And like the sort of, I guess it's just challenging in that you're bound to the neighborhood school boundary lines. And so like a lot of those, I think the student populations that you serve can be a lot of times better served if you're not constricted to like where their proximal location is, but instead like where you put district resources. So if you wanted to have like an entire standalone program for support out of one elementary school, or maybe you wanted to have, I shouldn't say totally standalone, but like a tiered set of supports, more emphasized in one school, being able to have some allocation authority with student population beyond what you have already with statutory pieces might be useful in an attendance center model or something like that. And so there are ways that you can serve students better when you aren't bound by where they live, is I think like the best way to put that. And the hard part is balancing that against the convenience that neighborhood schools have. And I don't know if it's an all or nothing type situation, or if there's a way that you can put your foot in like, two ponds, but a lot of other peer districts are experimenting and finding success with it, or you can sort of stretch your resources further and offer more to students when you aren't so stringent on the neighborhood school model. So I think there's definitely some merit in exploring what that looks like, even if it's not a full-fledged model, but a hybrid, there's got to be some middle ground where we can get more for less. So,
Sure.
Any other comment on the boundary study review report?
I'd say beyond just getting more for less, the idea with this switch would be to improve student outcomes. So I guess I'd like to see how this switch, if we get more information, would potentially lead to better student outcomes.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that in this, like these recommended next steps, talk about compiling some background information,
Sure,
learning about
yeah.
So I think like that the whole thing is centered around student outcomes. Like, how do you again take what we have and apply it in a more maximally beneficial way to like a student's education? So if you deal in a world of finite resources, you have to think about creative solutions. So.
And just to be clear, you're just gathering information.
Yeah. Unless you guys tell me otherwise, but yeah, I think just continue to explore it and maybe make it a more intentional conversation with at least a small group of staff and gauge interest.
I think there's a lot of room for exploring this topic a little bit more in our spring meeting for PTAC, or
Sure.
really summer meeting, because it's going to be July. So
Sure. And I think it's been brought up at just about every
Yeah.
committee meeting. So whether you're talking about what Michael hit on, or you're talking about class sizes across the board, or you're talking about teacher PLCs, attendance centers is something that comes up, behaviors, and what that could look like if that cohort of students was spread out across 12 sections instead of just maybe 2 within that neighborhood building. Just the impact that could potentially have on student success.
Yeah, great. I think that's exciting. There's some opportunity there for sure. All right, anything else on 7.03? All right, board reports. The FOIA report, you all have it, you see it. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, so go learning and teaching. So we've got here 8.02. Alan, have
No
anything to report?
update since our last meeting. We are planning a special meeting for January to review in greater detail just one topic, the ELA pilot. That date is being determined as we speak, but probably middle to late January, but before the January board meeting. So hope to have a little bit more of an update at our January meeting.
Great. Business services?
Yes, a brief update for you. Let me click on the right thing, though. So at the October 28th regular meeting of the Board of Education, we talked about some of the Business Service Committee recommendations. One was a 5-year facilities maintenance projection, and the BSC had recommended that the board direct administration to bring forward a draft multi-year facilities roadmap by January. That one would outline major maintenance needs, anticipated capital projects, show how our facilities align with current and future enrollment. That 2 would allow the board to better understand the size and timing of future investments relative to their urgency and potential impact. And that 3 would include a categorization of maintenance and capital expenditures by needed, wanted, and can't afford. The board directed the administration to basically take those recommendations, more or less. The assistant superintendent Stuckert of our business services arm had emailed me recently, and in sort of reference to that recommendation that the board had directed admin to undertake, and said, "Here's how administration think we should go about doing this." She needed a little bit more time. You can just chime in if I get something wrong. But basically, just a little bit more time than the original recommendation had called for, and they want to engage the architects about 3 year. Normally, we were on a 10-year cycle, but it's also your opinion that that's not very good,
Correct.
and it should, like, a 5-year cycle would probably be healthier anyway. And we're at 7 years right now. And in order to facilitate those recommendations so that the taxpayer can understand how we need to best maintain our 8 multi-million-dollar buildings, it would be good to engage the architects and maybe update our timeline from, instead of every 10 years, every 7 years. And I said, well, it sounds like let's bring that to the board, because it would change the thing that we had directed them to do based on the recommendation, mildly. It's my personal opinion that our expert assistant superintendent for business services' recommendation on how to implement what we want should probably be followed. But that was how it happened, and where my update is for you on that recommendation that you had all agreed to direct administration to undertake. Does that make sense?
It does. And I assume that has to do with the consent item that Alex pulled, the 4.05.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe that undertaking that was on the consent agenda. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions for business services? Okay. Policy update? Alex, you got anything?
No.
Okey-doke. Parent-teacher advisory update?
Yes, we met. We were able to pull together 3 recommendations for the board to consider. that we would, one, look into hiring or appointing a community resource liaison to address mental health concerns and chronic absenteeism. There was a very good discussion about services in the community, a lack of services that are currently out there, and exploring connecting students who are in high need and high risk to the services that we do have in the community. Additionally, we were recommending that you look into hiring up to 3 assistant principals to address those mental health concerns, chronic absenteeism, and discipline at the elementary school levels. The assistant principal suggestion has been floated around quite a bit and is one that looks like it could have a lot of potential to resolve not just those issues, but other issues that are ongoing that additional supports are needed. So it's not just one issue that's being addressed by hiring those positions. And finally, did the board consider or investigate modules on Infinite Campus that make documenting contacts with families and parents easier and more readily available to staff? There's so much more we could be doing with Infinite Campus, I think, and addressing that could make more data points that we could utilize and just streamline some of our processes. But those are our 3 recommendations. I'm happy to answer any questions about them. We did go over our allotted time, I think, a few times, but it was a very good discussion and a good back and forth with the admin, with the principals, and the members of PTAC.
Christian, just to update, we have kind of knocked out one of these already. We did not hire 3 assistant principals. So
I
don't
figured
worry about
that. I would hope not.
But Phoebe, if you want to jump in, the third one just about Infinite Campus, Phoebe was able to look into and open up some things for staff or just point them in the right direction.
Yeah, so a couple of the things, I was not at the PTAC meeting, so I kind of got the
Spark notes.
important details from some of our DLT, but I know one of them had to do with documentation for referrals and adding, Emily Waller actually asked me to add in restorative practices as a potential resolution to a discipline issue. So we had provided some training on putting in referrals and having resolutions, but we hadn't provided training on multiple resolutions because maybe there's a detention, but there's also restorative practices, or there's also some of these other pieces. So we are going to be training DLT on that really quickly tomorrow at one of our meetings. Additionally, the communication piece, I was able to talk to Nate Wright, who had used it previously in his district in Marengo, and we do have that in our current Infinite Campus modules. So right now, some groups have access. I'm going to be working with Ed on getting broader access, but we're able to immediately, again tomorrow, train our district leadership team on how to put those communications in. And I do think it's a tool I wasn't super aware of that we can now show more people how to use and save a ton of time and have more just better logs of some of those things we're doing, because we're not always doing a referral when there's an issue. A lot of times we're doing a lot of communication first. So we do have that tool. We will be providing some training on it tomorrow.
Wonderful. That's great. Way to move quick.
So yeah, I did have something. First, PTAC, that's Parent Teacher Advisory Committee, right? So these are
Yes.
coming from parents, teachers, and I think that's really cool. Christian, can you, or maybe Nick, or anyone, the building principal maybe, who would like to, could you speak to some wins that maybe you've seen, do you know other districts have, or other people, or have you heard about like the assistant principals at other districts really benefiting? Can you speak to some of the positives there? Or?
Jake, I hate to put you on the spot, but you come from a district, and Jake was a principal who had,
So I was in that role. I just think that there's some opportunities to log everything, so you're not running from one issue to another, jumping through hoops. So if you're looking for more of that information like Phoebe's talking about, it's much easier to say, hey, I got this right now. Commitment to teachers, I think, is a really important part. They do a lot of work preparing for observations, evaluation, timelines, meetings, and those things. And if it's just one person in the building, sometimes it's really hard to stay on track with those. I don't want to cancel on a teacher after they've done a bunch of preparing. So then when you come into a classroom to observe, you know, or they're wanting you and expecting you there and you can't because you're dealing with a student issue, that happens from time to time. So that's a huge benefit. I think there's the day-to-day stuff that's hard to maybe talk about all the time, but always someone being there representing. If we're at a district meeting, the other levels have the benefit of maybe one of their admin team being at that meeting, and then there's still someone at the building. That doesn't happen with elementary. A lot of times we're getting called out of those meetings for one reason or another. And then just to me, the instructional side of it, of being able to really sit down and talk to teachers about their instruction, and having someone to go to. So if you can split some of those evaluations up at our level, it's easier to sit down and talk to them and work through the evaluation process in the way that it's supposed to be done, as opposed to trying to work fast and maybe not as with not as much depth as maybe you could.
I think
Just a few.
at the elementary.
That is just a few,
I
there's
didn't
so
mean to-
much
yeah,
more.
I didn't mean to put anyone on the spot or anything.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
no, I just knew Jake was coming from a place where he had done that.
That's a good
But
question.
in addition, when there's only one administrator in the building at the elementary level, they're sitting in on IEP meetings. So then there's no one that's available, or then they potentially get pulled from an IEP meeting.
Case managing 504s is a huge deal too.
Yeah, they're sitting in on, going back to chronic absenteeism, on the truancy hearings. They're jumping in on virtual, and I think we have North Grove and West represented here from staff, where we have some of our specialized programs. And I think those buildings especially, there's a need for just additional support, and the principals in those buildings are often, as well as other staff, are getting called to help out with those specialized programs. So I'm sure Lene has a list too she could share, but.
and that includes like student crises, that includes like students who missed the bus. You know, we're pulling an administrator out of a building, maybe just one administrator out of the building to go pick up a student. And so there's a lot of room for expanding that, and just creating, having two administrators in the building makes more sense, because there'd be a lot more flexibility there, because there is a lot of changes that happen throughout the day.
Who subs for a principal when they're sick or gone?
Well, sometimes, central office administrators at times, but that doesn't always work based on what our schedule is. If it's unexpected, depending on the building, if there's teachers who have their type 75 and are willing to and are looking for that experience. But again, that's not every single building. That's just some buildings. On some occasions, we've had staff from a high school pull from them to put at an elementary, but while great and while there's support in crisis, those relationships aren't there, so students don't necessarily know who they are. So again, not ideal, but we piece it together.
You know what I found really interesting was the report from PTAC on ROE truancy support, and I found it really interesting. I was reading about this like TAOEP grant that apparently the DeKalb County Regional Office of Education didn't get, and they reduced their truancy support staff from 4 employees basically down like to 1.5 employees, and so that's for the region they serve, so not just our school district. And so something that came up at the last PTAC meeting was discussion about, well, where do other schools have to fill in the gaps when there is like truancy? And you talked about like sitting in on some of these truancy hearings, but more than that, just going beyond to like what level, like I think it was student check-ins, mentoring, like home visits, like family success. And so now it's really pulled back, and I guess the processing referrals, it looks like in a lot of cases are just falling on our administrators, right? Like there's a lot of this that staff is taking on. And I know we talked lightly about this at PTAC and it's recorded in the minutes, but like, do assistant principals have some overlapping duties to help alleviate some of that, either through those exact roles or by freeing up principals to take on some of those roles? Is there overlap there?
I would let you guys speak to this that are in the buildings, but I would say yes, because our principals are already doing it right now, the best that they can. So by adding someone, it would free up either the principal to take even more of a lead, or give more time to that, or the assistant principal would be able to do that, similar to at the high school, or maybe the dean of students focuses on it, or the middle school where dean focuses on it.
I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I know these are recommendations. What are the expected outcomes out of the recommendations? Is it more information for the board to consider?
Yeah.
So more of the conversation that we're having here, but a more formal.
From it, what it looks like. I'm sorry, Christian.
Very bare bones, these recommendations, but they arose out of a conversation, a very lengthy conversation with the admin, with the principals, and with the parents and the teachers. This is something for the board to just take a deep dive into.
Okay.
That's that's basically what the recommendation is.
So there's a business services / learning and teaching meeting in February. And I think that it's been discussed before that there's plans to kind of talk about a longer term staffing, like an FTE allocation, a positional allocation type of plan. Personally makes sense. I think the assistant principals sound really good. It seems like they'd do a lot of good for students, and also help out the teachers and the principals too, while you're at it, right? But it would make sense to me to take these things and kind of push them towards that one kind of meeting where we can have a more holistic kind of look at, what are our longer term staffing needs and trends, and how can we then, all right, great, how can we map some assistant principals into that plan? That's my kind of thought.
And I would add that 3 is relatively arbitrarily reached. The number 3 is a pie in the sky kind of recommendation. Like, hey, this is what perfection looks like if we had 3. But obviously that's not always going to be perfect, that it's not always going to be possible. We have to make sure that we have the full-time, the FTEs there, and the funding there. So that's something that we would also have to look into. So I agree that business services would be a good place to have that conversation.
Well, and it sounds like we're gonna have like a convergence meeting in February. So where we're gonna have the learning and teaching and BSC, just they're falling on the same day. And so there's gonna be a talk about, how some of those staffing needs align with some of the business needs of the district. And I think this recommendation is gonna find its way on that agenda. I think that's a really good place for it. So there's an opportunity, there's an action item regarding this recommendation lower on the agenda, so we can find a home for it. Anything else on this update, Christian?
Nothing to add.
Okay, great. Spartan Senate updates. There was a really nice video. Hope you guys got a chance to watch it. Yeah, they're doing good things at the Spartan Senate. So, any comments on the Spartan Senate update? All right, we'll move on to board goals update. Just a standing item. We have our board goals. We got a really comprehensive update, like 4 days. I don't know, just 20 days ago. So I don't imagine a whole lot of movement from then. I know there was some comment about a dashboard that Mike was working on, that you guys were doing some work on the dynamic public dashboard, and us trying to do that in-house to save cost. And I'm just looking at some of the last updates regarding some of the testing score recommendation pieces. There was a really detailed memo on the November 25th agenda, but is there anything to add? Any major notable movements from that point? Or
I think if you guys have any recommendations on the dashboard piece, just what to do next when it's complete. So I think early January, we'll have it in a place to do what with, present it, put it in a, at the January board meeting, or just push it out to you guys, or just make it live. But I'd rather have your feedback first. So we were just talking about that today, is if you guys have any feedback or thoughts on next steps, if we do complete it early January. I don't necessarily want you guys to have to wait until January 27th, if we can get this thing going and if you're happy with it. So just if there's general thoughts on that, or best way to roll it out.
I would feel comfortable saying, directing, giving Michael the authority to work with you and say, yeah, put it live or not, because we're not going to have a chance to weigh in on it as a board until the board meeting. But that's my understanding. We could delegate, Michael or Christian and Michael to say, yeah, it's good, make it live. That way it can be live as soon as it's done. Or otherwise we got to wait till January 27th to weigh in on it as a whole group.
When at one point we were working closely with it, not to be on.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Two, but
Right.
like it's been a while, so I just wanted to revisit. Like, should that be the route we still go to volunteer for another meeting, and work through Alan and maybe get his feedback if whatever you guys think is appropriate, just to get the ball rolling on it.
Yeah, I think there's a great I mean, if you have hopes that we can get this done and published as soon as possible, and you can communicate with Alan on this, I think that would be great. You guys have got a good idea of.
And maybe just to get some general sentiment from the board as a whole, my opinion personally is that the aesthetics is secondary to just getting the data in a easy to read format. Obviously, the more beautiful it is, the better, but maybe that's not priority number one. I know the LTC has put together some idea of what data we want to include. The BSC may have as well. Do we feel like we've got, Nick, a good sense of what we're trying to achieve or what we want to include in these dashboards?
Yeah, that's where we started. There were a lot of data points, so we're trying to pare that down to, and we're meeting about that tomorrow with leadership team as well to get some feedback, and then that's what we'd bring to you just for initial thoughts. But then even when we take it live, if you guys have feedback after that, we can quickly, pivot or tweak it however need be.
Yeah.
Your working document.
No, I think
Certainly
that's the
working
whole
out.
thing is
Yeah.
it's dynamic. So
Yes.
and I think one of the biggest advantages to like a dashboard like this is just it's going to be its recurring use in driving some of the decisions the board makes. So when you have something that you can quickly refer to, and you can track and you can report out, that lives in its own place, I think that's going to make decisions a lot more defendable. I think especially when we go into goal setting, if we start framing this document, this living place, I don't know I hope you guys have a snazzy name for it, but if what this is like a summative place where we report out to the community beyond just what the Illinois School Report Card does, because that doesn't tell, I mean, that is a intensely specific, I mean, there's so much detail to the Illinois School Report Card, and there's also a lot that it doesn't tell about Sycamore that I think there's an opportunity to report out on. So I'm hopeful that like what this does is starts the dialogue, and then as we go into goal setting and we start refining some of these subcommittees and like, hey, here are some pieces that are really important, like chronic absenteeism came up a lot as we look at truancy. Maybe that's something that finds its way into this dashboard. And maybe it lives there for a while, and then maybe we decide it no longer is a priority. And so then because we've accomplished its means, and so now it becomes secondary. And so I think that there is some dynamic opportunity there. But it is sort of like our living dossier of priorities. So I'm excited at the draft, or I guess the first iteration of it. And I think that the board will have most certainly opportunity to opine on adjustments. So.
Yeah, and just for a little teaser, keep you guys thinking about this. Just our overarching like success indicator areas, and then there's several data points within academic success, community engagement, district environment, financial stewardship, human resources, and student engagement. And then each of those areas has several data points under it on how we view those areas. So.
It'd be great if like. And again, I think about like the point of the school report card, the Illinois School Report Card, as a way to see how your district compares to peers. I think people who probably are going to that are prospective members of our community, or people who are just entering into the educational, world for the first time. They're a new parent. They're going, oh, how's my school stack up? What should I be aware of? What subgroup does my student fall into? If you're like really diligent, right? So where I think we have a really nice opportunity here is if this lives on a really accessible place on our homepage, and so people who are doing their due diligence about, is Sycamore a destination community for us? Is education the end all be all for Sycamore? This is what this is the more in life, offers more in Sycamore. It can live as a place where we tell our story beyond just the Illinois School Report Card. Something I think that's also really interesting is like going back to how we will weight some of the metrics that live on this report out to the community. There are opportunities, and again, I want to say this carefully, the Illinois School Report Card tells a lot of people who probably don't live here how Sycamore schools stack up to their district, and gives a call to action on if Sycamore is a place to live, if Sycamore is a place that's going to do a good job for. I mean, it fills into Zillow, it fills into Redfin. Like so if Sycamore wants to stand out as a community to send, how we stack up to peer districts matters a lot, and that then relates to our equal assessed value for our community because it drives market values. So I'll use climate survey. Our climate survey results for our school report card for one of our schools is really bad. Not for anybody's wrongdoing, just for it just scores really poorly, and that has a really big weighted index to the overall report. And so there's an opportunity there where you go, man, if we put some emphasis on that climate survey, which probably is like a low lift, and we were talking about this earlier, we're within arm's reach with our amazing graduation rates. There are some really nice opportunities just within arm's length that then make us a destination district. And
Could I cut in here? It's not that, just to be clear about the five essentials engagement piece, it's not that we actually score poorly on the survey at all, it's that our participation is just low.
right,
That's important. And
yeah,
so
thank you for the distinction.
because what we want to do is increase participation so that we can get more feedback from the community, from students, and from staff. But it's the negative marks we get on the overall report card is just because the participation is low. So trying to drive participation would also give us information and a better score. But I think you got direction on the.
Thank you for that,
oh, yeah.
because I was gonna ask when he got done, why is it?
Yeah, it's a.
But yeah, it tells a wrong narrative. It says,
Right.
oh, this school isn't what it could be, but in reality, it's one
But
tiny.
that's what people see, so it doesn't matter if it's true or not.
Well, there's the whole recognition side of the 5 essentials, but it also, if you don't have enough participation, they won't unlock the data for you to to be able to evaluate and understand how you can further improve. So there's a lot of benefit to that, aside from the recognition side. But I agree. There's also, there's the same, what you measure is what you manage, and this is a little bit of that as well. This is what's important to us
Right.
as a district. It's not just what's on the school report card, but it's some of that. But it's these other things that we see are important that we want to measure and hopefully manage. Maybe it's participation in the 5 essentials that can have great benefit from a recognition standpoint, probably student outcomes because we'll learn more. But we want to manage to that. And so there's good reason to have that. I think it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
And if there's another board member that's interested in participating, let me know, and we can work together on that. Sure.
I would like to do what I can.
Great.
All right, anything else on the board goals update? All right, we'll move on to the superintendent search process update. Again, just a standing update. We had all of our interviews. We had to reschedule, which was inconvenient, but glad we did it. It did not affect our ability to conduct effective interviews in any way, shape, or form, other than all of you and me missing more work than we probably wanted to. So that's how it goes. Other than that, superintendent search process is well underway, and there is going to be an opportunity in early January where we're going to do our second round of interviews, and that will consist of stakeholders. So we are going to solicit carefully in coordination with HYA stakeholders to be a part of that second round of interviews, and they will be critical in making what I hope will be our then decision moving forward. So stay tuned, as we'll be again operating all within the realm of what HY has advised, our paid consultants to follow all the proper procedural steps necessary to serve the community. So I'm excited though about us being able to incorporate stakeholders. I think that's a nice opportunity. So any comments on the superintendent search process update? Great. I should add those stakeholders will represent a cross section of community members. So it's going to be, the idea would be we want to hit really upper admin, our then administrators at the building level, teachers, custodial, basically every working group, and then a breadth of community members as well. So we're probably looking at 10 to 15 people. And then the way they do it, as I understand it, is there are rounds. So you have like 3 meeting rooms, and you've got one group of people, another group of people, another group of people, and then you work through it, and there's feedback. And we will be doing it here at this building, not at the Park District. So again, more to come on that. Looking like January 9th, though, is what I think we're thinking. So hopefully that works for everybody. Probably going to be 9 a.m. to like 5 p.m. So I'll work with HYA, and we'll be moving forward with that. So any questions? Comments, concerns? Okay. Old business. First item on the agenda, 9.01, board review policy revision, second reading.
What about the?
Oh,
I
yeah,
pulled that.
thank you. Yeah, you did pull it, Alex. Let's see. Are we in new business yet? No, we're not.
Oh
in new
yeah, I'm
business.
sorry. You're right. This is old.
No worries.
It's my fault.
Oh, it's all good.
So I'll take 9.01 then, right?
Yeah, please.
So per further discussion between the board president and myself, some local revisions to 480 have been pulled from this group since our first reading. So now 480, it's just the press language change, and then our auditors suggested not increasing the capitalization threshold to $10,000. A press 119 suggested upping it to 10,000. We didn't catch that, so now we're just reverting back to the auditor's recommendation of $5,000 for the capitalization threshold. The 480 changes at this time are not very substantive.
There is a recommended action for a motion to approve updates to policies 530, 810, 5270 as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes. So I'm sorry, you said 530, 810, 5270.
Yeah, 480 is not in this. I guess we're breaking it up into 2 different.
Okay, so we're doing just 530, 810, and 5270 right
Yeah.
now.
That is correct.
Okay. And then these, this is all second reading of these.
This is second reading.
Yeah. And, okay, yep, I just want to make sure it was clear from the 480 stuff that he was just talking about.
Yeah,
Understood.
absolutely. Anything else? All right. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Kratos,
Yes.
Regnery,
Yes.
Santu,
Yes.
Pownell,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thanks. All right, we'll go on to press item 9.02, which is the press issue 120 updates. Alex, do you want to preamble this? Or?
It was the same. I mean, it's the same memo. So the information I just gave is still pertinent to this. And this is where we will actually make the approval to 480 potentially. 480 has been loaded into diligent. And the language that's stricken through is that's highlighted in turquoise. I need to clarify, is not language that's already in the policy. It's the language from our first reading that we're removing pending further review.
I understand.
Does that
Yes,
make
makes
sense?
sense.
That was the optional language that you chose not to take from the press policy.
Kind of. It was optional, not from 120. It was optional in press is optional language. It's not a result of 120. It was previously issued language that was optional that we opted out of, that the committee then suggested opting into, that now we need more time to realize and discuss the ramifications of those changes. So it's just this language will be kicked back to the committee to review further. But it has nothing. This is the only 120 changes. We're changing annual financial report to AFR.
There's
Right.
there's an inclusion though in here where it has under control requirements for checks. It's still highlighted and it looks more like cyan to me. I don't know if you're seeing turquoise somewhere else, but I'm seeing cyan. Either way, I see it there, and I think from my understanding of your memo, omission of that under the control requirements for checks for referral back to policy was where we had left
Yeah,
off.
I think that's a typographical error because it's written and then it's stricken through right after the next sentence.
I see it,
So
yeah, right.
the entirety of the turquoise language under control requirements for checks should be stricken through. So I guess if we need to get that in the motion, that's
Probably for clarity.
yeah.
But so somebody, just to
Seeing more
comment, so the policy committee meets to review the policy, there's press updates. But one of the other things that the policy committee has committed to is to review all the policies to make sure that if there's any local language or optional language, it's reviewed and decided, do we as a board or a policy committee want to bring that to the board as a recommendation to include these items that you're talking about that are highlighted or colored in a bluish color. Cyan, turquoise, lots of ways to describe it, are some optional language that wasn't part of Press 120, but upon further review, there was optional language that the committee said, hey, maybe we want to include this and bring it to the board. And at this moment, it sounds like we want to remove that as a suggestion,
Admin suggested we
okay.
review it further.
and then further review for determination later whether it should be
Yes.
included or modified.
Correct.
But stricken through at this time.
Yeah, it's just not showing as
And
stricken through in the
so
We
document.
should probably update the.
So what, all that's being done right now is adopting press language.
Yes, well, everything that's in the 120 second reading update, with exception to the
Capitals.
turquoise or cyan,
Except
colored
for the
control requirements
5,000.
for check.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So let me,
yeah, it's just under the control requirements for checks, that highlighted language, while it isn't stricken through in its entirety, imagine it is stricken through in a colorful world of cyan.
or
and
just
turquoise.
the sentence is duplicated. The first one is not stricken through; it's underlined. The second's stricken through.
Yeah, it's duplicated.
Is
So
that clear to everybody? What?
Yes.
Okay,
does everyone?
Yes.
so we are not, okay, just,
Yeah.
should we amend, I feel like we might
I think we
want to
should
amend
amend it
this
just to
motion.
clarify.
Yeah, just so we're not, okay. So is there an amendment to the motion?
I can try. I move to approve the policies as written, with the exception of the language in 480 that states all checks issued by the school district must be signed by either the treasurer or board president, before the stricken through sentence that states all checks issued by the school district must be signed by either the treasurer or board president.
There is a proposed amendment to a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Kelly, would you call the roll?
I'm sorry, who did the motion?
Alex did.
Alex.
Is an amended motion. Yeah. And I'm sorry, it was an amendment to the motion, so we have yet to vote on the motion yet.
And the second, I'm sorry.
That was me, Alan.
And roll call. Regnery,
Aye.
Xantu,
Yes.
Koppel,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Grados,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, the amended motion, I won't restate because of how long this is taking, it stands amended. Kelly, would you call the roll on the motion that is now standing amended and is seconded?
So this is on the.
It's an amended motion, yeah, so it's the original motion, but with the amendment, so the amended motion now stands. To any parliamentarians watching, we'll send feedback in the comments.
Regnery,
Aye.
Xantu,
Yes.
Koppel,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Grados,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carried.
Doke. All right, moving on to new business. All right. First item on new business was pulled from consent, item 4.05. Is there a motion to approve item 4.05?
So moved.
Second.
Been seconded. Any discussion? Now, we did have an explanation from the Business Services Chair regarding the memorandum included regarding the commissioning of FGM to act on the board's behalf in accordance with the recommendation from administration. So, with that, is there any further
I have
clarification
just a
needed?
question, yeah. So with this contract, will we be Will this essentially replace the HLS survey?
No.
So we'll still have to do the HLS survey?
HLS is required by the
Yeah.
state. Facilities assessment is not required.
But this is an embedding, so we can just kill two birds with one stone?
HLS is already done. We just finished up the 10-year
Okay.
safety surveys. Those will be presented at the February BSC meeting.
Okay. But it won't give us just an extra, I guess, an extra year since we're paying this, it won't. Do you see what
Totally
I'm getting at? Okay,
Health life safety survey is totally separate from a facilities assessment.
okay. So is this more granular
Yes.
or?
And it's
okay.
not just focused on health life safety. It's everything.
Yeah.
facility-wise, yeah.
Okay.
Is this cost pretty consistent to what it's been in the past? I mean, obviously there's inflation, but,
It's actually a lot cheaper.
okay, well,
Just because they just finished our health life safety survey, so they are giving it to us cheaper than they typically would. From a time perspective. So normally it would take them a lot more hours to complete this, but since they were just in all of our buildings the last 2 summers, it's not gonna take them as long, so this is cheaper than it typically is.
wow, okay.
So just from an agent obsolescence standpoint, like I'm just thinking it's cheaper when you know something's gonna fail and then you put it on a replacement schedule and then you bid out that job and then you replace that item. But if it's like 30 degrees out and it's the dead of winter and your heater breaks and you call the 2 a.m. HVAC guy, like you're paying hand over fist. So is the idea that this information is going to avoid situations like that where we have to sort of gamble on our agent obsolescence of our like major critical infrastructure? Is that like a useful function for this spend?
Yes. In that scenario, we do contract out, so it doesn't cost us any more money to call someone at 2 a.m. But I get your example there, but yes, I mean, this is something that we talked about at the business service committee level, that we'd like to use that facilities assessment to share with the community. So this is kind of what prompted my recommendation is doing this every 10 years. Those numbers that were given to us 7 years ago are they're not relevant anymore. So I think doing this every 5 years makes more sense. It's more transparent for our community. It gives more relevant numbers, more accurate numbers. And I think starting this off with what the Business Service Committee would like as far as a report to look like, I think it just makes sense to update those numbers right now before we do that.
I guess, and just maybe I'm being redundant, spending this money now will help us save money later? Is that like the intent? That's essentially the intention, right? Because then we will have more information that will let us better bid and purchase because we have more accurate information about our buildings and our systems.
Yes, and it gives us a better picture of what the total dollar amount is that we need to pump into each of our building.
Because if I'm just a taxpayer and I'm going, I don't need to know this, not interested in the transparency aspect. But if you go, well, need to know or not know, knowing this means that it'll inform our admin team to be able to purchase better. And like you spend money now, but you can save 5 times that by not having to gamble with whatever will fail when it fails. Am I missing it, or is this in this?
You're right.
Yeah?
It's more of a preventative maintenance
Okay.
schedule also.
Like the ounce of prevention, pound a cure adage. Okay.
Sure.
And I think more accurately, long-term facility planning, which is something the BSC's talked about
Yep.
with their different buildings.
You're talking to a guy that I don't change the oil on my car, so I don't.
I don't want to.
Clarifier.
But it would certainly help us understand from a planning perspective.
Does your car even have?
Well, that,
Isn't
there's,
it a
there's
Tesla?
there's two layers. There's 2 layers to the joke, right? Now you want to do preventative maintenance on your car. You don't want to just let the oil sit in it and the engine freezes.
And one of the deliverables of this is that large spreadsheet that we saw at one point, right? Okay. And we need to make sure that from an expectation standpoint, the links, everything's functioning in that document. I know there were some issues with one that we looked
Yeah,
at in the
the
past.
document will look completely different. Yeah, we've had some recommendations from the committee on what that report should look like, so
Okay.
it will look different.
And then we can take that to translate into something that's more digestible
Yep.
for ourselves in the community. Okay, great.
Will that updated 5-year plan be tailored to what we can afford? Like, will they help us budget too and prioritize?
That's what the assessment does. It does prioritize.
Yeah, so, but will
what's
they,
needed
will they
right
sit
away.
down with you guys and say, we would suggest doing this in this year, this in that year? And assuming your capital budget's $500,000 a year, this is what you should do in each year? Like, will they help at that
I mean, that's what
level?
the assessment is.
Yeah.
The assessment lists out the priorities.
Yeah.
And we take that and we say, okay, we have $500,000 to work with each year. This is what we can actually pay for
Mhm.
year over year.
But they don't
No.
tie in our budget.
No.
They're just simply the priority list, and then we take that information.
Yeah.
I guess what I've seen is it seems like there's usually more recommendations for what should happen in a year than we can afford to do, right? And it just sort of snowballs.
Yeah.
So I see the intent would be to get more accurate numbers, but my concern is even if we have the accurate numbers, how do we pay for it? Like if we only have the 500,000 a year, we only have the 500. Like, is it just
600,000.
600 now?
I mean, that's the whole point of this operation
So you
is
can prioritize.
to prioritize and
Yeah.
bring then what we can afford to the BSC and then what we can do moving forward on how to get those projects done.
Yeah, it's more of long term. How will we get there? Because we have more needs than we can meet with
Yeah.
with our
But we need
current
to have accurate
situation.
numbers
We need to
first.
know. Okay,
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
what are the next steps?
gotcha.
Any other discussion? Good stuff.
And
Good stuff.
this is something that we're working into our plan. I mean, this is something we're gonna utilize in going forward. It's not just gonna sit there and accumulate dust. It's gonna be part of our action.
I think going forward we could do better
Yeah.
at that.
Yes, it's just like we were talking about with the dashboard. What you measure, you can manage. So if we know what's
Right.
needed, we can manage to what our budget is and address those things that are most pertinent. But if we don't know about it or don't have a good sense of what's ahead of us, we might spend in the wrong area, not knowing next year, next week, whenever, we have a bigger burden that's more critical.
Right. Like something worse that really needs to be repaired, it's gonna cause a big problem.
We can
And we're
plan
over
for it.
here changing, I don't know, it's a bad example maybe, but changing light bulbs or something when this thing that needs to be worked on a little bit so it doesn't break and cause a huge expense because it hasn't been maintained. So it's like, it is about prioritization and knowing what we need to do first. That's, I think, is very helpful.
I think the hard part, like for me on it, is like the frustrating part, like that the HLS survey doesn't hit on those notes. Like it's just like, ah, man, you really wish it did, but you know, it's what it is. So, okay. Yep, there's a motion. There's a second. We had discussion. Any other discussion? No. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Santu,
Yes.
Koppel,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Grados,
Yes.
Regnery,
Yes.
Vito,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okey-doke. First item, or second item of new business now, sorry, old things. We have the district calendar, first reading. You guys got a chance to look at the district calendar. Is there a well, it's just a first reading, so we're not actually hosting a motion on it. One comment I will add is how, as we talk about HVACs, how integral HVACs are to opening up schools earlier or later. Didn't realize that, didn't think about that. Heard something and was like, man, if you have a working HVAC and you live in Illinois, you can, have school earlier in August than later in August. And so,
And could you explain a little bit about how that works? You know, why we can open up earlier or later?
Air conditioning.
air
Just
conditioning.
because of the air conditioning? Or, okay.
Yeah, it's miserable otherwise. Let's see. Yeah, looks good. Give the community some time to let this calendar percolate, and all right, move
So
on.
can I read, just excuse me real quick, so the only change really is rather than having a couple 2-hour dismissals, every early dismissal is a half a day.
Yeah, we're consistent across the board. Instead of having 3 dismissal times now, we have 2 dismissal times, our early dismissal, which will be the half day, and then our full day. Those days moved around a little bit, strategically placed throughout the calendar, to be intentional about professional development. But yeah, it was just removal of the 2 hours.
This is awesome. I think that's really good. That's a nice adjustment. So, gotta have that predictability. Okay. Item 10.02. We do have approval of PTAC recommendations. While this is a new business item, I'm asking for recommended action here on the recommendations of the PTAC. And we had some discussion earlier on this, so I'll just propose that we have these recommendations. I mean, twofold. We could take a motion and a second to approve the recommendations, and the recommendations are all non-binding, as I understand it. So that'd be one route. Second route is we could give direction to have these recommendations added to the February meeting. So, is there a preference?
I would just, whatever meetings admin finds appropriate.
Yeah, you like
Yeah,
that?
I suppose we could say whatever admin find appropriate. That makes sense. It makes sense to me to fold these into our long-term staffing plans, and so
I would agree.
Perfect. So it sounds like we got a motion to.
we're just gonna direct them, right?
Oh, are you? You
Yeah,
don't
I
have
mean,
to-
There's nothing.
there's nothing, right? Just
Yeah, you guys feel good directing? Okay, you comfortable with your?
Fine with that, yeah.
All right.
Is
you've
the
been
direction
directed.
clear, Nick?
Feel good about the
Okay.
direction. All right. That's it. So now I'll solicit a motion for executive session. Anybody got a motion?
I move to enter closed session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or volunteer of the public body, or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. That's 5 ILCS 120C1. Then collective negotiation matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. That's 5 ILCS 120C2. And the selection of a person to fill a public office as defined in the Open Meetings Act, including a vacancy in public office, when the public body is given power to appoint under law or ordinance or discipline, performance or removal the occupant of a public office, when the public body is given a power to remove the occupant under law or ordinance. That's 5 ILCS 122C3. Do we have any litigation since last night?
No.
Okay.
second.
There's a motion and a second.
You want me to restate it?
Please don't. Kelly, just for clarity, it's exemption 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Koppel,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Grados,
Yes.
Regnery,
Yes.
Santu,
Yes.
DeVito,
Yes.
motion carries.
Died on the inside.
What?
It's a little chilly. All right, we're back in open session. It's 9:57 p.m. This meeting stands adjourned.